Hello, people. I have been told that I need to speak up for these videos. I don't know if I can do that today. I just got done. Let me give you the backstory. About 3 months ago, my son, who I rent the house that I grew up in, that my parents owned, and that he now owns, primarily because I wanted him to have something. But I'll explain that a little bit more in a little bit. I just got done sending him his $900 in rent. Now I realize to a lot of people out there, that's not going to seem excessive, even low. I've been on disability for years, and not because of a mental status or any other reason than my body had given out on me. My knees are bone on bone. I have degenerative bone disease in my back, or degenerative osteoarthritis. I've been diagnosed with RA, but I don't take any medication for that, so I guess if I was, nope, not gonna go there. So I don't know if I'm actually allowed to use that one, but I get flares, and I just won't take most medications. So I've been on disability since 2012. I never asked for it. I didn't even want to apply for it. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time, and I had lost my job during an economic downturn, turn down, whatever, from the company I was working for. I actually believe it's because I wasn't as mobile as I needed to be at the time. But can't prove that. I never pursued it. I just let it go. And then I got sick. Really sick. And although I live with a gentleman, between the two of us, it was tough making ends meet. I was looking for another job. I was working from home for 2 years, which even that was difficult. When your back hurts, sitting doesn't matter. I went to a clinic, and they told me, at the time, I was having congestive heart failure. I don't know about that. I know I was in a lot of pain, and I was very sick. I was in PA, and I needed some kind of medical coverage, which is the reason why I went to the clinic to begin with. And at the clinic, they got me all signed up to get some medical assistance from the state. Well, then I heard back from the state that I had to requirement apply for my Social Security before they would help me with my medical assistance. I wasn't asking for anything else. I wasn't asking for a handout. I just needed some help with my medical issues. So I filled out the paperwork. I never thought that I would get Social Security, although I was worse off than almost everyone I knew that was getting it, but that was not my goal. My goal was to get better so I could get a better job. Because we were barely surviving. Social Security sent me to their doctor because I hadn't been going to a doctor. I couldn't afford to go to a doctor now. And when I was working, I was too busy working. I worked in retail management, low-level retail management, store level, where you work a lot of hours for enough pay to get by, and you're always on call. So there was no time for me to go to a doctor, and no money, although I had insurance, no money for extras. So I filled out the paperwork for the Social Security. They sent me to a Social Security doctor. He gave me the exam in the office. At the time, I was so sick I could barely make it in the office. But I went. I thought my hip, there was something wrong with my hip because it hurt so bad all the time. It turned out that it was my back, and I had sciatica, severe sciatica. I could stand on my feet maybe 5 minutes without severe pain. And my Social Security went through. Nobody was more surprised than I was. Nobody. I had already received my unemployment, thus the reason for me working from home for 2 years. And I was on the phones every day. I worked for AAA. I worked for AT&T and DirecTV. Not under those specific names, but those were the companies I was working for from home. But when you're working from home, at least then, and we're talking about 2009 through 2011, 2 years, you still had to have standard times and standard breaks. I was still trying to learn how to deal with chronic pain, and it was very difficult for me. But my Social Security went through. I got a whopping $750 a month, the bare minimum at the time. Over the years since then, I've come up to $1,055 a month since 2012. That's with inflation, the thing that they do every year. And I could tell you the name, but I can't think of it right now. But it's the increase that they do every year. And one of those years there was no increase because the economy was good. Um, 8 years ago from now, 2006, I wanted to move home to New York, not the city. I'm in a small town in southwestern New York. The economy here has been bad for a long time. When I was a kid growing up, the economy here was good. The town was run by furniture factories and tool making plants and factories. My parents both were factory workers. And we did okay. We didn't have everything, but we did okay. When I was 2 years old, my mom and dad moved into this house with me. It's just a little cottage, but it was perfect for the three of us. We did picnics in the yard and barbecues, and I spent all of my childhood years here. As an adult, I moved away because the economy here is not a stable economy unless you're well educated. I've worked in retail management and in the food industry all of my years until 2012. I will be 65 years old in 2 months. 3 months. October. But the factories closed in the 70s and 80s and continued to close for many years. And the economy was very bad. But with the economy being bad, this was also one of the cheapest places you could live. And I always said, when I retire, I'm coming home, because then I'll be able to afford to retire. Well, 8 years ago, I wanted to come home. But I have to tell you a little more before we get there. My mom passed away when I was 25. My mom and I argued a lot. A lot. It was intense. I had no idea what a treasure I had in my mother. But I always knew, without fail, that she loved me. Wasn't always easy. My father was an alcoholic. He was not a mean alcoholic. He just spent most of his time and money in the bars. I actually didn't realize until I was an adult and saw pictures in each of the bars that I went into, that my dad went to, of him passed out at the bar. Not realizing that my father was the town drunk. I didn't see it that way. Later on in life, I realized it. And there's no way of denying it. It's the absolute truth. But my mom took everything she had and put it into me and this house. And she worked hard for her money. But this was our home. And she was going to make damn sure that we had one. Now, they rented here for probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 years. Nah, it was less than that, because I was 2 when we moved here, and it was before I was 10 that they bought this house on a land contract and spent the rest of the years, my dad, remodeling it. My dad wasn't a bad man. He just liked to drink a lot. And he wasn't real good with responsibility. And he was constantly remodeling the house with stuff that he got from places that him and a friend of his would tear down and strip. Legally. He put that stuff into the house. When my mom died, I had come home just a few months before she died. I had been living in Reno for a few years. I did a lot of moving around over the years. I drugged my kids all over the country. But we had been living in Reno. I came home, and she died a few months later. She had cancer. She was taking cancer treatments. Now, mind you, this is in the 80s. I believe, if I had time to sit and think about it, I could tell you exactly what year it was, but I was 25 years old. I grew up thinking I was very spoiled. And in many ways I was, because I never, ever, ever, even in the darkest moments, ever thought I wasn't loved. My mother made sure I knew I was loved my whole life. They weren't rich. They both worked at factories. But I never thought I wasn't loved. It's something I tried to pass on to my kids. I thought I did, because I told them every day I love them. I made a point of that, because that's what my mom taught me. So anyhow, when my mom died, I was home for about a year, and then we went back to Reno for a couple more years. I found out a few years later about my adoption, that I had been adopted. Never knew it. Well, it was 5 years later, to be exact, because I was 30 years old. That was kind of sent me in a tailspin. A lot of negative shit happened in those years after Mom died. And especially after I found out about the adoption, because, you know, it's a process when you find out something. And my mother had taken it to her grave. Hardest part of finding out I was adopted was finding out she never wanted me to know. But I dealt with it the best I could. I could have done better. Don't get me wrong, I could have done better. But in the moment, I dealt with it the best I could. Fast forward, we came back. The only time I didn't work was when I was here, living here, because it was almost impossible to find a job that you could survive on. Now, my kids were older when I moved back in '93. I came back here because life was out of control in Reno. Partially me, partially my husband, and partially my kids. I'm not going into all that again. I've already been told about my videos by a family member. My son, to be exact. My fucking videos is what he said. In 1993, I came back. I stayed here at this house, which my father had turned into a garage. There was no toilet in the bathroom, just a hole in the ground. There was, you could see daylight through the bathroom ceiling. It was a mess. This house was a mess. But he had moved in with his girlfriend then. Actually, that happened within a year of my mom passing. But that's another story, too. I went a little wild for a while, for about a year. I connected with my ex-husband at the time, my children's sperm donor, as they called him, my first husband, desperately asking him for help. He had never supported the kids. He had never paid child support. He didn't even acknowledge them. But he was on the birth certificate and we were married for both of them. His idea of help was not helpful. So moved away from that situation. Not moved physically, just ended that situation. And kind of was running on air for a few years. Then I got a job at KB Toys I was also working at Payless Shoes at the same time. They were right across the hall from each other. Was with another man living in a town just outside of here, about, I don't know, 12 miles away. Working in this town, coming through every day. My father was going through cancer treatment for prostate cancer. I was driving into town every day, in the winter even. I was driving into town anyhow for work, and I would take him for his cancer treatments in town, and sometimes in Erie, but mostly in town. But I did go to the Erie doctor. My dad went through the VA. I went with him quite a bit in the beginning. As it became more and more impossible because of my work, he took the bus, the veterans bus. I ended up moving into this house with him in 1999 because every month my father would come to me. I was managing the Spencers at the mall at the time, and every month my dad would come to my work and tell me about all of his overdue bills, and they were shutting off the gas, and they were shutting off the water, and they were shutting off the power, and I bailed him out as much as I could. Now, I'm sure that if there are any of his friends that are still alive, they heard him go to the Legion and tell stories about me taking his money. I never took my father's money. I helped him do his paycheck every month because of other things that I'll explain to you now. Dad had turned this house into a garage. And his girlfriend, while he was going through prostate cancer treatments, threw him out of her house. So he had to come back here to live. Now, I hadn't been living here in several years at that time. And he'd turned it more and more into a garage over and over. This is where he would come, I guess maybe when he wanted to get away from her, or he just wanted some time to himself. He was losing the house because he didn't pay the taxes. Now, let me explain this part. When I was still in Reno, my husband had an accident. Actually, we were both working within walking distance of each other, different businesses, when he had an accident. I say that to remind people, again, I was working at a full-time job. I was working in a embroidery manufacturer business, running their machines, some of their machines. When my husband, who was a welder in an iron company, had a 10,000 pound iron beam, steel beam, come off of the hooks and land on his foot at work. I was called to go to his work, or go to the hospital. About 9 operations later, he was out of the hospital and back home. He got a settlement from that, a small settlement, nothing in comparison to what it should have been, but it was about $30,000. And Dad had said that he was going to lose the house to taxes again. This was a battle from the time my parents bought this house, because my mother was the only one that ever paid bills. My dad gave a portion of his income to my mom to pay bills with, and the rest he drank. And that's just the truth. I know everybody isn't going to agree with that, everybody isn't going to believe it, but that's the truth. So my mother paid for just about everything. And every year they had to go to my uncle to borrow money to pay the taxes. Usually every 3 years, because that's when they start threatening. Because Dad didn't contribute to that. He gave so much of his pay. And back then, the pay was like $125 a week. So, you know, he was a factory worker. Mom was a factory worker. So once again, now Mom was gone and Dad still wasn't paying the bills. Not living here. He didn't have lights hooked up. They'd shut the lights off. The gas was still hooked up. He had a stove in the back room hooked up illegally with no vent. But he was hooked up for that. Anyhow, he was going to lose the house. 3 years of taxes that he owed. My mom's grave didn't get a headstone until after Dad died. And my kids bought it. My kids bought an adjoining one for both of them. But not till after Dad died. But when Dan got his settlement, my husband got his settlement, we sent my dad enough money to pay the taxes in full, get a headstone for my mom's grave, and there was about $500 left for him to do what he needed to do. He paid 1 year of the taxes, and he spent the rest. My mom didn't get a headstone. So once again, this is years later, Dad's house, my home, the home I grew up in, was gonna be lost again for taxes. And Dad's credit was garbage, because he didn't know how to take care of that stuff. He never tried. He just got through every month. And it got bigger and bigger. I found a company. I didn't have the money to pay for it either. I was a retail manager who barely had enough money to live myself. Renting an apartment in another area from here, not too far from here. Had to pay my own bills. Had a man living with me. We shared the bills. We both worked. And I came down and checked on my dad almost daily. Because again, he would come up every month with a bill that had to be paid, and I would pay it. Or I would give him the money. At first I gave him the money, and then the bills didn't get paid. He'd pay just enough to stop the shut-off. Let's get past all this. Anyhow, I'm getting caught up on details. I found a mortgage company that would take him with all of his bad credit and they mortgaged the house to cover his bills at the time, plus the house. It didn't appraise very high because he had turned it into a garage. There wasn't even a full, complete floor in this living room I'm sitting in now. And he was supposed to live here like that after his girlfriend threw him out. I found a mortgage company that would work with him. Mind you, I'm still not living here. I'm living away from here. It was something he could handle with his income. And we saved the house. I found grants to help get the house back up to living standards, up to code. And through an organization here, I found a number of other grants, and they found a number of other grants to put more money into this house. The only thing you had to do is live here for 7 years. And they did, and they came and they fixed things until there was no more money, but they fixed it to where it was up to code. Or sort of. It's a cabin. I mean, it's a cottage on the lake. Not on the lake, we're half a block away from the lake. Dad's health wasn't really good after that. He had COPD, and he was an alcoholic, and he still drank every day, and he still drove every day. Although I did try to change that, that was not successful. I had to move in with him in I think it was 99 or 97? I'm not exactly sure. I think it was 99, yes. And because I couldn't afford to pay his bills and mine. And I didn't want him to lose his house. My dad needed a place to live. Yes, he was an alcoholic, but he was still my dad. So I moved in with him. I told him when I got him the loan, and I told him when we moved in, you will pay this loan. He got $900 and some a month from Social Security, plus he got a small pension from the VA. I figured out the loan, so he only had to pay $300 a month. That was the cost of his mortgage, and that included his taxes and insurance. When I moved in, because I'd come here every single day and there was no food in the refrigerator, the utilities were getting cut off all the time, and then I would have to clean up his mess. I didn't have to, but he was my dad. Was I mad? Yes, I was mad. And I was mad at him for continuing to not take any responsibility. I wanted him to make out a will for a long time. And when it came time to make out the will, my daughter took him to make out the will. Okay? Let's be clear on that. But I had specified exactly what my mother said to me. My mother always told me, and when I tell you my mother paid for this house, my mother paid for this house. Or they would have never been here for me to get the mortgage to save it again. Told my father, you pay your mortgage, you pay your car insurance, because I didn't think he should be driving. I'm not going to pay his car insurance. And you pay your life insurance. Altogether, all of that, in 1999, came to less than $500. That gave him half of his check to do whatever he wanted with. We bought groceries. We paid all the utilities. We paid the cable. We paid the phone. We paid for everything. Other than his mortgage, his life insurance. His life insurance was $25 a month. And his car insurance, which I don't even know how much that was, but at the time I did. It came to $500, roughly $500, for those three bills to get paid every month out of his $900 Social Security check and his small pension, which was over $100, but not $200. I don't remember the exact numbers. The words that I said, that my mother told me, she wanted me and my children to live in this house forever. She wanted all three names in the will. And she wanted me to be able to live here for the rest of my life. But the house would go to my kids. So the will was made out with all 3 of our names on it. That way, if anybody got into any financial mess, we're not going to lose the house because it was in this name or that name. Or my name. Okay, because I struggled financially. Now, if you ask my children, they'll say, she struggled financially because she smoked pot and she was always buying pot. I smoked pot. You're right, I did. I did. But it's not why I struggled. I spent less on pot than they both spend on a day of drinking. That's how much less I would have spent on pot per month. Whatever. Okay, fast forward. Dad passed away in 2003. Either 2003 or 2002. Again, I'd have to look it up. My memory is not what it used to be. I had taken care of him for 4 years. And when I say taking care of him, I cooked, I did his laundry, I made sure every single time he'd have a COPD attack and he couldn't breathe. And I don't know how many of you have dealt with COPD before, but they come on fast and they come on out of the blue. I called the ambulance every time. I did everything I could. Was I mad? Yeah, I was mad. Because most of those times, he was having a COPD attack because he had gone to the Legion and gotten drunk too many times, sitting in a bar with smoke and... Anyhow. On Father's Day, my dad died. He had gone to a Legion convention, which, let me tell you this, I begged the executive board, the commander of the Legion, please quit asking my father to go on these Legion trips. He's not well. You guys know he's not well. You're going to kill him. The weekend before he died, the weekend that he died, because it was Father's Day, it was a Sunday. He had gone that Friday and Saturday on a Legion trip with his girlfriend. Her and I didn't get along. I have a name for her that I'm not going to tell you what it was, but it wasn't a nice one. And he came back sick, the way he always did from these. And it was Father's Day, and I didn't even tell him Happy Father's Day, because I was mad. I had just gotten him through being sick and in the hospital and almost dying the month before. And I can't tell you how many times I called an ambulance for him, or how many times he went to the hospital because he couldn't breathe. If I wasn't here, nobody would have called, because there would have been nobody here. Well, maybe the girlfriend, but she was drunk with him. She was a drunk too. So, you know, who knows? They didn't manage to feed themselves. They couldn't manage to pay the bills. So how am I supposed to think they could have managed to handle that? I'm getting off track. Anyhow, my dad passed. The day of the funeral, I already knew what was in the will. I had a copy of it. I was done. It had been really hard the last year that I was taking care of him. He had dementia. He was telling people that I was taking his money. I never took my father's money, ever. I helped him manage his paycheck, his checkbook, I made sure every month that those bills were made out. I made out the checks for him, and then he signed them. His mortgage, his life insurance, and his car insurance, his car insurance. It's another thing. My kids kept buying him cars until finally, 6 months before he died, he was drunk with his girlfriend and had a wreck, and they pulled his license. I had been trying to get his license taken away from him for at least 6 months prior to that, if not more. It's not that easy. Nobody was hurt, thankfully, but he did hit another car. He said it wasn't there because his peripheral vision was so bad that he didn't see it when he pulled into another lane. And of course he was drunk, he was drunk. Oh my God. I went to the hospital and him and her were stupid drunk. And they had gone out of town. Not that far out of town, but out of town to drink. The accident happened, as usual, less than a mile from the house. The day of the funeral. I just wanted to get out of here. It had been horrible. The fighting with my dad, the fighting with my kids, because my dad was telling them that I was taking his money, which I never did. Ever. And I had power of attorney. The last 6 months of his life, when he couldn't drive, that's the only time I controlled his money. And I didn't take his money. I made sure the bills got paid. He still had money to go to the Legion. He still had money to do things. He couldn't drive, though. Anyhow, the day of the funeral, I told my son that I wanted him to have my share of the house. He had had his problems, and I really felt that, for one thing, I couldn't manage the maintenance that the house needed, because it needed a lot. I got it fixed and brought it up to code, but that doesn't mean that it didn't need so much more. And after 4 years of the battle, and my father turning my children against me, telling them that I was taking his money, all I wanted was out. That's all I wanted. I just wanted out of here. I told my son I wanted him to have my portion of the house, because I felt he needed something to ground him, to give him the stability that he didn't have. And he was a good dad. He had a son by that time. I had my first grandson, and he did everything to take care of that boy. And he had turned his life around in many ways at that point. And I wanted him to have a home. I might not have always been the best mom at finding us a good home, but they always had a roof. And I wanted him to have a home. And my daughter was married to a man in the military, and they were constantly here and there and everywhere. And she agreed and gave him her part too. So the whole 3 parts were his. And I was happy with that. And on that day when I told him that, he told me, because I was going to Pennsylvania. Well, no, I didn't even know I was going to Pennsylvania yet. I moved to Jamestown. I didn't go to Pennsylvania until probably 6 months or so later. I don't know. My daughter gave him her portion too. She didn't want to be an executor on the will, although she took my father to make the will out and made sure she was an executor, the executor. So we signed that over to him as well. Yes, the house needed work, but it was a home. It was a home. I made it into a home again. Not perfect home. It was never perfect, but it was a home. And my son had been through a lot. His son's mom and him had split up, and I just wanted them both to have some place to call home, to hopefully ground him and start the right process. He told me that day, Mom, if you ever need to come home, it'll always be here for you. So now we go back 8 years. November 11th, actually, I moved back home, here. He wasn't living here anymore. He'd been renting it for a few years. And I had wanted to come home sooner, but he had it rented. The girlfriend that he still lives with, this house was never good enough for her. She complained about it constantly to everyone that would listen. She wanted the big house on the hill, and they got the big house on the hill. So when I came home, I told him what I could pay, which was $500 a month for rent. And he agreed to that. He said that would pay all of his payments because he took a mortgage out on it and he did some work on it and all of the bills that he had acquired putting the house together. And then after that, I was told that, he forgot to include the sewer tax, and I told him, I'll add another $50. The furnace broke. We needed a new furnace. It's only a wall furnace. Again, it's a cottage. But that was, it was an expense. And I said, I can give you another $50 on the rent every month to help you pay for it. I just added to the rent. And that's what I did. So my rent increased to $550 at that point. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago. 3 months ago, my children have been mad at me for a while. Well, they've been mad at me since my dad died. They've been mad at me since before that. I'm the bane of their existence, I guess. Their life wasn't easy. I drug them all over the country. Their parents were drug addicts. I was a pothead. Yeah, I got involved with a little bit of drugs, not a lot. My kids never saw me doing anything other than smoking pot. But maybe that shouldn't have happened either, but it did. Because I didn't want to lie. And when I got involved in crank, as they called it, in Nevada, it was a 24-hour-a-day town. And everybody was doing it because it was a 24-hour-a-day town. I never went looking for it, ever. If it was there, I'd do it with everyone else. Well, my husband became addicted to it because he worked a lot of overtime. Dan may have been a lot of things, but lazy was not one of them. He worked a lot of overtime. And it, I guess, helped. But it became a problem, and I took my kids and left. My son came after I left. But that was planned. Didn't exactly happen the way it was planned, but it was planned. That's that. Okay. So 3 months ago, I got to tell you the other first. My son and his girlfriend are strong Trump supporters. I don't know what my daughter is. I don't even want to talk about her. We don't speak. I am not a Trump supporter, and I'm pretty vocal about that. I've always been vocal about everything. I say what I say, and I say what I mean, and I don't really care if people don't like it. You can't accuse me of being fake, because I put it all out there. But that has come between us. It has added to the animosity. Now, when I came home, we were good. We were good for a while. Quite a while. But there have been words over the political issues. Anyhow, 3 months ago, my son let me know that he was upping my rent to $900 a month. I get $1,055 a month. The man that I live with, he gets a little bit less than that. He's going to be 70 this year. I'm going to be 65. So we maintain our existence on roughly $2,000 a month. Plus we pay all the bills. We pay electric, gas, and water. We don't pay the sewer. That's the homeowners. I have, from the minute we moved in here, paid my son every month on the 3rd, or about that, when my disability check came through. And he pays all the utilities, and, well, the majority of the utilities. I have one credit card. It's got a $500 limit on it. It's always maxed out. I pay it every month. I pay at least $300 every month on it, because that's how I pay my bills. And just because he pays gas, water, and electric, I have a credit card. We have streaming. He pays the internet. We have our own bills. And groceries. Oh yeah, let me be real frank on this. I do get assistance. For 2 people, we get about $2,000 a month in cash. We get $147 in food stamps. Now, if that makes me a bad person, I don't know what to tell you. Because I work really hard to make that $147 stretch. And when I say I work. I look over all the ads. I collect the coupons. I get the codes. To get $147 a month in groceries. Do we eat healthy? No. But we eat as healthy as we can. Luckily, there's a grocery store here that gives us bucks back on our fruits and vegetables. So I'm able to keep potatoes and staples in the house. Only up to $20, but hey, that $20 goes a long way. I make it go a long way. And I get medical assistance. Because I'm now in an electric chair. I'm now in a chair. Because I have such bad mobility. Yes, part of it is my weight. But not all of it. My back is disintegrating. My spine is disintegrating little by little. My knees are bone on bone. I have high blood pressure. I've got a list about this long. In a few months, I will go to retirement. I won't be getting disability anymore. But the fact that I get disability and the fact that I will be getting retirement, Social Security, is because I worked. Something my children would tell you I never did. And that is just a bald-faced lie. But I didn't have a good job. I had my children early. I made a lot of mistakes in my life. I'll be the first one to tell you, but I learned from them. My daughter and I quit talking, I don't know, several months ago, because I just couldn't take it anymore. There's never a time that I can say anything to her that I don't get degraded and told what a bad mom I am. And she raised her children telling them that I was a terrible person, I was a terrible mother. Oh, if you listen to her stories, you know, we lived on the street and they didn't have shoes. That's not true. That is a bald-faced lie. So anyhow, back to where I'm at. My son raised my rent to $900. Now, just so you know, I sent the new lease in to social services. I just love talking about my social services. No. But they will increase my food stamps to 200 and 240, 200 and somewhere right around that. That's for 2 people. That's not each. That's for 2 people. If you go to the grocery store to feed 2 people, most of the people I know spend that much every time they go. I've been making it work on 147. So that extra, no, it's an extra $130. So it's $270. $272, that's what it is. Sorry, it took me a minute. So that extra $130 I am looking forward to. I haven't gone to a food bank or a pantry or anything like that, although I would. But oh yeah, our car, his car, the gentleman that lives with me, it's a 2005 Hyundai Santa Fe. We bought it with 30,000 miles on it. And we've had it for 20 years. It will no longer pass inspection. My son and my nephew, my niece's husband, have fixed it multiple times over the years. But it will no longer pass inspection. I get it. But now we don't have a car either. And my son knew that that was going to be the case when he hit me with the $900 rent. So we don't have, I mean, the car is still here right now, but it's not inspected. So, we have no transportation. Made my first rent payment today, though. Got that $900 rent check out to him. Actually, it's not rent. It goes right through. It's digital. But that was the first thing I did, just like I always do when I get my paycheck. Which left me with 100 and something, not less than 150 in my account. Now, the gentleman that lives with me gives me $200 to add to the rent because he still pays all the bills. So, I mean, that's only reasonable. I don't know what we're gonna do. But goddamn, I'm sorry. I love this house. I might be the only one that does. But it's my home. So I'm going to find a way to make this work. I don't know how. Hopefully these videos where I'm pouring my heart out will help. And I can get monetized and hopefully make enough to live. Oh, and by the way, this adds to it. Talking about living. In October of 24, and I lost my sister earlier this year too, one of my sisters. In October of 24, now my daughter and I were still on good terms, and for years I asked them to get me nothing for Christmas. I wanted them to do for their families, and they always did something, you know, but in October of 24, while visiting my sisters, I found a lump in my right breast. It was probably the size of a quarter at that time. I didn't go. I thought about it every day for months, and then in February or March, I am completely against mammograms. They taught us in health class way back when, you don't smash your breasts. It's not good for them. So I've done mammograms over the years, but I hadn't had one in a while. It's been since I lived in PA, and I've been here 8 years. So I wasn't going for a mammogram because this was hard. And everything I've read is you don't want to break that outside, what is the word? It's like a crustacean around it. So I went for an ultrasound. I saw it. Looks like a little demon with horns. Little prickers all the way around it. It kind of looked like a goat head, if you know what that is. And I've refused a biopsy, and I will refuse a biopsy forever. And I'm not taking treatment. I have I am treating it with supplements and staying as healthy as I can with what I have to work with. And this is not easy. But I've been doing it. I've lost 2 very dear friends to breast cancer. And I watched them suffer. And I mean, they suffered. I watched my mother suffer all those years ago. I said, I'm not doing that. I'm doing it my way. I take supplements every day. I've read everything there is that I can get my hands on. I'm sure there's a ton left out there. And I just quit reading it because it only made it worse. So I have a ticking time bomb, possibly. The head of radiology, after the first thing he told me was, we're going to get you in for a biopsy today. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not doing that. And I'm not doing poison. I'm not putting poison in my body to kill me instead of this. No. I'm 2 years now. Over 2 years since I found it. It's bigger. And this last week I found a second one. It's a little one. I'm hoping maybe that means it's fibrocystic breast disease, but I don't know. I really have no idea. I haven't done any more research on it. But I will not be taking poison. I refuse. But I sent my son his $900 this morning. Ask him, the one thing that I did say when we made the change is he was going to have to maintain the yard now, because the man that lives with me is 70 years old, going to be 70. And he can't do it anymore. We had a riding lawnmower that my kids made sure that we had when we moved in here. Given to us. And that's what he used. There have been many problems. My son and my nephew have both worked on it. But it was a constant source of money and time. So I told my son, okay, you're going to have to take care of the lawn now. I'm going to be a... I said, we took care of a lot of things that you never knew about. I didn't call him about little stuff. I called him about the furnace. And I called him about, I don't know, some plumbing issues. But we didn't call him about the little stuff because I didn't want to bother him. Because he works hard. Now, mind you, he has every toy in the world. He has a truck that he drives around that I think he said was $40,000. I don't know. But they have they got the big house on the hill. They got the pool. They got the ATVs and the dirt bikes and all the toys. Boat, multiple vehicles, camper. They got it all. And a big, beautiful home, which they take very good care of. And they got $900 from me today. And I'm sure I'm going to hear about this video. I heard about the other ones. But I've been told all these years that, you know, I needed to get off my lazy ass and get a job when I could barely walk. So I'm trying to get monetized. I'm not here to ask you for money. I'm just trying to get monetized. If you follow me, if you comment on my post, if you like and share, all of that will help. But I'm not here to beg you either. But if you understand, because this generation of kids, which are now almost in their 50s, and the younger ones even more so, they don't seem to understand that life is not what it used to be. And when they were growing up, times were different, and things happened differently. If you understand this, if you've had grown adult children that have treated you like you were such a horrible person when you weren't. I told my children every day that I loved them. I still love them. I don't like either one of them. I don't like what they've become. And I don't like what they do to me. And they know that this hurts me, and they don't care. They just don't care. Now, I can be a hard ass. Don't be fooled by these by these statements or the sound of my voice, because I can be the biggest bitch you ever met. But I've done the best I can. All I want to do is spend the rest of my life here in my home. My son says that's what it costs him now to run this house, and he's got to put a roof on it. Of course, he would have had to put a roof on it anyhow, but that doesn't have anything to do with me. But he's got to put a roof on it this year, and his insurance is insisting, or they're going to drop it. And that's going to cost him $15,000. Or so he says. I'm not doubting him. But I don't want to leave my home. This is where I grew up. This is where I wanted to be in the end. This is what my mother wanted. And damn it, I'm gonna find a way to do it. And if I have to sell everything I have, which isn't much. Don't get me wrong, there's not a lot. I'm not gonna survive on that very long. If I have to sit on this computer and make videos every single day, all day long, so that I can live in my little cottage that's not perfect. The floors are unlevel and needs a new roof. I just want to live in my home and not be disrespected by the people I gave birth to. I have one grandchild and one great-grandchild left because the other two from my daughter have been poisoned their whole lives, being told what a terrible person I was. If this is happening to you, I am so sorry. And I understand. Because it doesn't feel like anybody understands when you're going through this. It doesn't feel like anybody could even begin to understand, because who the hell would do this to their mother? I used to argue and fight with my mom. I was rebellious. I'm sure, in hindsight, I would do anything to go back and change that. But for all of that, I know she wouldn't want me to go through this either. So I'm going to wrap this up now, because I've made it way longer than I wanted to. And I was hoping to get through it without tears, although I know you hear it in my voice and I can't do anything about that. But if you can relate in any way, please like and share this video. Leave a comment. Whatever you can do is greatly appreciated. Thank you.